Welcome to the DraftKings Market Movers for March 27th, 2026 on Drafting Out Loud. Let's see what we got in store for today. Here are our risers. As expected, at the top of the board, we have Brian Robinson Jr. He has almost made up all the ground he's lost in the last month. Now, on a prior episode, I had mentioned that he probably should get drafted like ahead of like Isaiah Pacheco and running backs around that round a range, and that Tyler Algier was going in the 150s last year. And so Brian Robinson will probably make his way up there eventually. And looking at some drafts yesterday, seeing him go in like the 170s, sneaking into the 190s still in some drafts, like depending on who's in it. So be aware of your drafts. But if you have sharp people in the draft that need running backs, seeing him go much earlier than 194, like in the 170s or so, which I think is totally fair. And that's where I'd said to probably be looking for him in some cases. Because again, if you told me I could take Isaiah Pacheco or Brian Robinson Jr., I think I'm just taking Brian Robinson Jr. in that instance. And that is probably around the 170s or so. He might get snapped up earlier, but I do think it's important to try to get the value right now while you can versus squeeze all the value out of it in your draft. So I would be targeting Brian Robinson Jr. Just not at 150 or 160 right now. Try to get that value right now. Looking at the rest of the risers, we got a couple early round running backs in Ashton Genty and Saquon Barkley rising up the boards. And um, after that, we have Christian Kirk. We've talked about Christian Kirk. I think he fits the certain builds again where you are very weak at early production wide receiver, or of course, if you have a San Francisco quarterback on your team. Joe Flacco is in the news. So guess who's rising up the boards now? Joe Flacco. I don't know if someone just took Joe Flacco really early or something like that on DraftKings. Again, DraftKings does some weird things sometimes where one player gets drafted way early is my assumption, and then all of a sudden their ADP rises dramatically, and so Joe Flacco's on there. Probably a good pick for Superflex in some instances if you want to take backup quarterbacks in Superflex, but in regular best ball, I don't know how much Flacco I'm gonna get. Maybe it's like a handcuff in an odd build or something like that. It makes sense, but I'm not probably taking much Flacco. Chris Rodriguez still rising up the boards, but slowly. It's kind of slowing down. And at 137, I'd hope it slow down. I don't know how much Rodriguez I want at pick 137. I think I'm going to let other people probably take him at this point in time here. Najee Harris rising up the boards because he got the positive news, making up most of the draft capital he's lost over the last month at this point in time. And if you want him, you probably got to draft him before the last round on both DraftKings and Underdog. And I was saying like it's a last round pick. I took him a couple times before, but really haven't touched him much other than that. And listen to some other people talk about him. I guess the one positive thing would be if he's working out for teams, he's probably going to play, and if he's probably going to play, he's probably going to um, provide value at this draft pick of 200 and whatever. So maybe mix him in on teams where it makes sense. It's just a tough pick. Like, are you drafting him for the beginning of the year? He's got the Achilles, so I don't know how much you're drafting for the beginning of the year. Are you drafting him for the end of the year? Well, he's not a rookie running back. You don't expect tons of improvement in that respect, and you expect rookies to kind of take up more of the slack as the season goes on. So he's in a weird spot still. I don't feel great about it, but I guess maybe convinced to mix him in every once in a while. We got Jahmyr Gibbs rising up or no, he's actually, so you can tell here, I don't have everything in order here. I did it like a little bit of a weighted thing just to get a better idea of what's happening. And Jahmyr Gibbs is just kind of like, more often being the number one versus the number two. And you kind of are seeing that a little bit more because um, Brian Robinson signed with Atlanta. And so then some people are like, oh, now I got to draft Jahmyr Gibbs number one instead of Brian Robinson. I don't think it matters. Pick whichever one you want as the number one. You knew that Atlanta was going to get another running back. You knew that Detroit was going to get another running back. Just take either one. Javonte Williams has been rising up the boards consistently over the last month and still ticking up here even by the week and the day. I don't know if I get that one, but it's happening. And I'm not a fan of that price, I don't think. Someone convinced me otherwise, but I don't think I'm a fan of that price. And I don't think I'll grab much of him at 39. DJ Moore and Josh Allen rising up the boards. And look at this. Essentially on DraftKings, if you want to get a stack, you got to take them at the 2-3 turn, basically. And so I'm guessing that's what's happening. Josh Allen gets taken at like pick 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. Actually, no, probably he's getting picked often probably like 22, 23, 24, and then DJ Moore is getting picked at 25, 26, 27, something like that. And I've seen that in the past. And that stack is essentially just pushing both of them up because you got to get Josh Allen at the end of the second to then get DJ Moore at the beginning of the third, or you're not getting the stack at all. And making both of them rather pricey and not prices that I don't think these are prices I want to pay. So I don't anticipate really getting this stack much at all. Maybe if you run into a draft where Josh Allen for some reason gets to the middle slash end of the third, and then DJ Moore makes it around in the fourth, you just take it because it's not possible that often. Otherwise, I don't know how often you're going to end up with Josh Allen, DJ Moore, unless you're really pushing it to the 2 and 3. J.K. Dobbins rising up faster on DraftKings than underdog doesn't make sense to me, but it's happening. He's almost here at pick 100 and probably squeezing all the value out of this one here on DraftKings. And you could say there's maybe just a little bit more on underdog possibly, but really squeezing that value out on DraftKings here at 102. Drake May, a gap in, I've been thinking about Drake May. I think he's a gap in my drafting a little bit. Someone that I think I need to be looking at a little bit more. And maybe I'll do a video on that specifically to just think about it even more and put some of those thoughts on tape. But Drake May rising up a little bit. He's down for the month, so I don't know why he's rising. I don't think there's been anything that says he should rise. Maybe it's like anticipation for AJ Brown maybe there. So people are like drafting AJ Brown and trying to get an AJ Brown Drake May stack before it actually happens. You'd think if AJ Brown does get signed to New England, that Drake May maybe goes up a little bit just because of the offensive weapons. And so that's maybe another argument why you shouldn't be blind to Drake May. And then Chuba Hubbard rising up the boards, which is surprising. There's a couple drafts, I don't know if it was DraftKings or Underdog or both, where I felt like I got Chuba in the like 90s or like late 80s, and he just kind of fell. And I was like, okay, well, I don't even know if I needed a running back on the team, but like, okay, I'll take him at this point in time because um, you don't want to get burned by what he did 2 years ago because he could do it again this year. But when he starts rising like this to pick 72, I feel like a lot of that juice is again getting squeezed out of that. And there's a lot of more exciting players that you could get here. And Chuba's getting squeezed though himself a little bit, right? Like you have Jonathan Brooks, who's back, who was their high draft pick 3 years ago now. This is his third year, so third year in the league. So I guess 3 years ago. And he's expected back, and Carolina hasn't signed anyone to really take the place of Jonathan Brooks. So you got to think that Carolina is going to give him a shot, and maybe Jonathan Brooks takes a larger section of this role. I mean, Chuba lost the role last year to Rico. Why can't he lose it to Jonathan Brooks at least a little bit? I know injuries were part of that, but there's a lot of risk here. We talked dead zone running backs. I feel like that's what we're talking about here as far as some of our risers go in Javonte Williams, Chuba Hubbard, definitely like kind of dead zone backs a little bit, even though maybe they don't really meet the qualifications, and for one reason or another, they do feel like those backs where you draft them with relatively high capital and then you regret it later on. So I don't think I'm going to be overweight either of them, but I definitely want to kind of add them to my teams in the right situations. But I don't want to be overweight on them probably. Here are our fallers. Puka, stop doing stupid things. I guess people are just taking Chase at 3 instead of Puka. Cortland Sutton still falling. Some people are kind of out on him again until 100. Other people think he's a pretty solid buy here at 76 initially, and I'll just keep on saying it, I guess. I think I'd throw in like 77 as my number of where he might end up at. And so I think you guys start thinking about him here. Again, there are other players that are around this wide receivers around this place that I think you could argue are just as good a picks. I wouldn't say they're better picks, but just as good a picks in like the Pittsburgh wide receivers. Uh, I'm a little intrigued about McCarthy with Rodgers with the Pittsburgh receivers if there's something there. But I think Sutton, as he continues to fall, if you can get him in the 80s, I feel like that's pretty good. And I don't think he's going to get much further than the 80s by in the next month. So that's like the best value you're going to get before the draft. Now, after the draft, he might continue to fall further. But if you want closing line value, at least on the pre-draft best ball, you're probably going to get it at pretty soon. Um, I guess really not closing line value, right? Because it's going to keep on falling. But if you want the best value, you're almost probably at the best value given there's like a month left and he's not falling that fast. There's enough people that are in on him in the 70s to just keep on taking him. Pat Bryant's still falling, and Troy Franklin here still falling, and you can get them now in the 200s rather consistently, and I think they become probably a pretty good pick around there. Hoping for some explosive weeks or unexpected significant roles, either due to injury or whatever else. Bucky Irving still falling. I again mix them in where you can. Devon Achane falling, mix them in, and I'd say mix those players in more or less depending on how much you were drafting them before. If you're drafting them more before, you probably don't want to mix them in as much because you probably have those types of combinations. If you have them very little, then maybe mix them in more to get better, more interesting combinations. Ricky Pearsall still falling and falling rather significantly. You can see here 0.96 for the day, so like 1% for the day, 4% for the week, almost 3.5% for the week, and 15% for the month. So he's falling rather significantly for being a pick there in the middle of the board. And um, his situation, I'm debating. I think the reason why the fall is happening is probably because of the Mike Evans, Christian Kirk thing. The reason why maybe you could argue that it shouldn't happen is because Pearsall probably wasn't going to play the Mike Evans role anyways. Um, but of course, I think all the injury concerns are what there is. Injury concerns and not really doing it for a full season type of thing are the big concerns for me. You could get burned by him just like you did last year, or maybe he makes it happen this year and then you feel great at this price. So just a really risky profile. Maybe like a boomer bust pick, possibly. And I got too much of him already, so I don't like when he gets to me. But I think he's maybe a good pick at like as you get closer to 100 here. Jamison Williams at 50. I don't know why he's fallen. I'd take him. Juwan Jennings, we know why he's falling. Let him fall and grab him at a discount. Jonah Coleman, we know why he's falling. I think you can at 150. I think that's got to be pretty nice there. Trey Benson, I'm still avoiding him. The ones I want to hit on here the most, Kenyon Sadiq, not the one I want to hit on the most, but Kenyon Sadiq falling, and I not hearing much like other than him running an awesome 40, he just wasn't that productive in college. So he's not a Colston Loveland from everything I'm hearing. He's not a Warren from everything I'm hearing, and his uh his actual football skills maybe leave something to be desired, but his athletic ability, of course, is the best of the best. So does that translate in the NFL? I'm not sure why it would be. So I'm not overweight on Kenyon Sadiq. I'm letting other people overdraft him. He's starting to fall now, though, so he's losing some of that momentum he had. As you can see here, over the last month, he's falling, and over the last day, he's falling. So if you can catch a falling Sadiq, I think he's probably a good pick, especially if you're waiting on tight ends and then you end up with like a falling Sadiq as like your first tight end, and then you grab some safer guys even later. I think you can be happy with teams like that. And last one here that is another blind spot for me is Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. And I've been thinking about this one here. Uh, Maybe this is the time to grab Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt because he might have the biggest range of outcomes, right? Like if Washington does get Jeremiah Love, then Krosky-Merritt goes to zero almost probably. But if they don't get Jeremiah Love, does Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt then rise back up to like pick 100 or something like that? I feel like maybe he does. He showed that he could run the ball, if I'm not mistaken, last year. He just isn't any. He's just not a pass catcher at all. And so, and also, if if uh if what's in Jaden Daniels stays healthy in Washington, that's what's supposed to keep open up the running lanes for Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. And Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt's athletic enough to take advantage of those running lanes. They both just got to stay healthy. And of course, he's got to be the starter to show some value there. So I think here in the 130s, you can probably start clicking him if you want a very boomer bust type of pick, right? You grab him here and Washington never gets that running back and you're very happy that you got him, or you grab him here and they do get that running back. And then you of course could probably regret it because you got horrible closing line value. So think about that. Think about your risk profile. But I think in the 130s, he's starting to become attractive. And if you can catch one that's even falling more in any individual draft, I'd probably scoop him up. So there you go. Here are our platform values for the day. Brian Thomas has been at the top of this chart for a while. And at pick 75, maybe similar to your Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, you're drafting him saying, well, what if he gets traded to a different team? Then he's a good value at 75 or something like that. So maybe mix him in, but I think he's a scary pick just with how he just doesn't seem to have a role in Jacksonville relative to the other wide receivers. We have all our free agents and rookies on here still, and Jordan Tyson and Jeremiah Love and Jonah Coleman and Denzel Boston and Mekhi Lemon and Carnell Tate. So if you want the rookies, DraftKings is still the place to go. Last time we checked, most of these players were also dropping. They aren't on, not many of them, if any of them. Only Jonah Coleman is on the fallers list and the values list, right? Is he on this? Yeah, on the fallers and the values list. So they're not, the rookies aren't falling as fast as they were before, but they're still big values on DraftKings. So the place to go for them. Um, the players I'm most intrigued on this list with, I think, are Jamison Williams and Devonta Smith. And probably number one is Devonta Smith. Because again, what if he ends up being the number one wide receiver on the team because AJ Brown gets traded? I think that's definitely got to return like a lot of value with that pick right there. You can also get a Hertz at a pretty good value right now too, in the 70s or something like that. At least in the 60s and maybe the 70s, depending on what's going on. So I like Devonta Smith, I think. And these rookie prices, not the best rookie class, but again, all these rookie prices are way lower than what they were for like your Tetairoa McMillan last year. So at least I think most of the risk is baked in with these prices. And again, bang for your buck. They might not hit, of course, and then that kind of stinks that you got them on your team. But if they do hit, you probably are really happy they're on your team. So I think you definitely got to mix them in, probably be at least equal weight on them where you can. But I think I'm targeting here probably Devonta Smith is the most exciting one, if you ask me, on this board, just because he shouldn't go any he shouldn't fall at all, but he maybe has a chance to rise a lot. So that's like a really safe but exciting pick right there in Devonta Smith, if you ask me. I like the idea still on DraftKings. You see like Breece Hall on here at pick 37. You can play and by the way, Trevion Henderson is not on this list, but he's still a 10% value on DK over underdog. So I just still do like the idea of trying to grab a Breece Hall, Trevion Henderson stack, and then maybe if you do something like that, it gives you more reason to grab your Drake May as well. So there are your market movers on DraftKings for the day. I will see you on the next one. Peace.